Hey, it's Josh Vigar from Android Authority. What's going on, everybody? And every photo and video that you're seeing in this camera shootout was taken on the cameras of the Nexus 6. So I hope you guys have been enjoying the full Nexus 6 review that I put out, and I did want to have a camera shootout ready for you guys once that review was put out, but then I realized a lot of the photos that I wanted to show you were already in the review. So I went ahead and took a few more, and I wanted to present them to you. Right now I'm showing you the front-facing camera so you can see what the quality is like on there. The color isn't quite as good on the front-facing camera as it is on the rear, but then again, neither are the pictures. So here we are with the pictures of the rear-facing camera on the Nexus 6 in a bunch of different situations with 100 crops, so you can see how much detail was captured in those particular situations. There was an indoor shot right there using incandescent lighting, but here's an outdoor shot of a kid's fire truck, and you can see that even though there's a little bit of a lens flare from the sun, the detail was captured quite nicely. What I really love about the Nexus 6 camera is the fact that its color is actually really nice, as you can see in the sunflower. Basically, what it will do is up the saturation a little bit for a bit of a punchier photo, but not so much that it is truly inaccurate when compared to the original scene. But as far as clarity goes, there's a real sharp and very detailed shot here, especially when I focused on the middle of my glass. The focal point that you have will have a lot of detail. Let's talk about the colors again as I show you a portrait of a couple of my best friends meeting the TV star Randall Park, and you'll see that the skin tones actually look quite nice. That somewhat higher level of saturation really helps here. After that, this Tabasco bottle shows how the reds and greens look quite nice, and then to get a nice blue palette, I have the blue bomber right here. Not only is the blue shown quite well on here, but the lines that comprise all those pixels that comprise Mega Man are also rendered quite sharply. And then finally, with this soldier right outside that very store, you can see some of the detail that is found inside of his face. Oh, that one's not questionable to have in the video. What one's not in there? That sucks. In low-light situations, the camera performance does seem to taper off, which might have been expected already. There will be a lot more noise and grain in these photos, but I will admit that the Nexus 6 was able to at least get some shots, whereas other cameras just really can't do the job. In lower light situations, you might want to use the flash as well, but unfortunately, it's not the best companion. Despite a good focal point here on this particular photo, I wanted to use the flash to lighten it up, but because the flash is wrapped around the optics, it really only just illuminates and kind of floods the subject that is closest to it. For example, here with my 3DS, I was able to use the flash, but it only really illuminated one part of the photo. Unfortunately, that's just the reality when it comes to this flash. As I show you a couple more examples of how the flash simply floods the subject that's closest to it, you might end up turning on HDR+ as a way of compensating for this. HDR+ will of course take a bunch of different exposures and put them together, which will probably yield you a better photo than the flash will be able to provide. HDR+ in low light situations is not necessarily the most ideal place to use that feature, but nonetheless, there are times when you might just have to, and luckily it does do the job a little bit more often than not. All of the videos taken with the rear-facing camera here are taken in 4K resolution, and while I'm usually very impressed with what I find from there, the controls unfortunately are a little finicky. You can see here that I lost focus on the flower that's there, and I struggled to really get it back. When you tap on the screen as videos are being taken, you end up just taking photos of what you're shooting, and that is a little bit cumbersome, at least for me. And as you're going to see at the end of this video in the outro, yes, unfortunately, the camera, when capturing video, can only get mono audio. HDR+ was already mentioned earlier as a way to improve the low light situations, but in the real world, it's honestly my favorite feature on this camera. And the reason why is because when you're trying to set the exposure for a particular photo, you could definitely tap on a lighter part to darken it down, but then the whole photo gets pretty dark. Or the other way around, if you want to lighten up a dark area, the whole picture starts to get too bright. This is a great example right here, where on the left side we just had a big blown out area, but when I turned on HDR+, it got all of the various exposures and put it together so that everything looked more realistic. That way you didn't have highlights or too dark shadows. It's honestly a great implementation of HDR+, and it doesn't take too long to process these photos. You just have to keep your hand still for a little while, and then you'll end up with a shot that is not only detailed, but has all of the coloration put properly because it takes all those different exposures. And finally, a couple of panoramas to end this video. The stitching problem still comes back here. If you have a subject that just moves around too much, you'll see that they're cut out of that particular area. This is a problem you'll also get in the various modes found in the photosphere, which is precisely the reason why I don't use either of the photosphere and panorama that often at all. As always, thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this camera shootout with the Nexus 6. It's a very impressive camera, and I have to say that every time I take a photo, I actually really like what I see. The 4K video recording, as you have seen, and right now you're seeing in this outro, also does a pretty good job as well, having the saturation that the pictures have, and also getting a lot of good detail. Keep it tuned to Android Authority, and don't forget to check out my Nexus 6 review, which you can see in the link right over on the side over there. Drop us some likes on our videos, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, because AndroidAuthority.com is your source for all things